Hi, I'm Max Davey from Games for Families, and this is the fourth video in my series Great Games for Amazing Kids, where child development, special needs and board games get together and sit down for a nice cup of tea. So, how many things are you doing right now? You're watching, listening to me at least partly, but you also may be scrolling Twitter, shopping online for pink face paint, or Googling the third album of Brother Beyond's stellar career. But you're also sitting, breathing, digesting your food, smelling coffee or phenol, remembering that thing that you said you'd do today, but the point is, it isn't actually, the interesting question isn't how many things you're doing, but how many things you're ignoring, and how your brain is able to concentrate on that one single thing, filtering out everything else, at least to your own awareness. That's an incredible thing, and most people can do it perfectly well, but some people can't. As a specialist in attention disorders, I call these people with a wonky filter, or maybe a busy brain or a fizzy brain. All those things are more or less the same way of expressing the fact that the brain doesn't have control over what it's aware of, and therefore becomes very distracted and craves, above all, stimulation. That, I think, is why the people with attention problems need to be stimulated. They find boredom almost unbearable. They need to have things going into their brain all the time, and quite often they just need to move, because at least that's something. So why would I suggest something as slow-moving as a tabletop game for these ravenous minds that really need to be stimulated? Why don't I just say, well, just leave them on the PlayStation. After all, that virtual environment is perfect for their cognitive style, giving them constant stimulation in a completely varying and constantly rewarding environment. I think the reason is because life isn't video games, and the advantages of video games don't generalize to life generally. So you have to have a kind of halfway house between the real life, which can be really boring and unstimulating, and gaming. So I think it's important to try tabletop gaming, but with a child with attention problems, if you are so inclined. But it's also important to work out, to realize the challenges that they have. And I know I say this, if you've watched the other videos, I know I say it every week, but in the particular case of kids with attention problems, you're sitting down, you're waiting, other guys are going to have their turn. You've got to sit down and listen to a rule set and understand it and then apply it and then retain it. That's all challenging. You see how they struggle in class? Well, it's exactly the same. It's like a little bit of lessons. So sometimes visually, teaching them by getting on with it can be better. But let's say you give it a try. What do you need? Well, what you need is quick setup, few rules, but proper engaging decision making. Random, quick, silly games that don't make any sense actually bore them quite quickly, because they're not looking for anything to happen, they're looking for stimulation, and particularly the bright kids in this category, they need stimulation, proper decisions. But you also need quick turns. So theme, I think, also is quite helpful, because what they can do when they're waiting for their turns is just spend a bit of time imagining themselves as monsters or pirates or pure emanations of absolute evil, for instance. So the first game I would reach for, and one of the games I would reach for in all situations, is Skull. Now, I just talked about theme, and in itself, on the face of it, Skull is themeless. It's an abstract game about bluffing, deceit, and flipping either a skull or a rose over. But once you sort of tell the story of this was the game that pirates used to play, and you've got this lovely art, it starts to drip with theme. You start to feel like you're kind of in Port of Spain in the 19th century. Or maybe that's just me. Welcome to the Dungeon is another one which I think packs an awful lot of game in a very small box and a relatively short time. It's essentially a kind of game of chicken, when you're kind of trying to be the one who doesn't go into the dungeon, unless of course you reckon you can do it, in which case go for your life. So that kind of dynamic is really good for these kids. Rock, Paper, Wizard is a game that's slightly flown under the radar, but is a really fun re-implementation of rock, paper, scissors with a multiplayer, in a multiplayer way, where you're kind of choosing your target, and also each different gesture, and there are 27 in here, does a different spell, and so you get this kind of chaos thing, but it's not without its strategic element. Obviously, lots of kids love the Dungeons and Dragons theme. We have a lot of fun with this. But the daddy of all games to play with kids who are getting into gaming, who maybe have some attention problems, is King of Tokyo. It's got quick rules, it gets going quickly, the turns are quick, and you get that really strong theme of smashing up Tokyo, being a monster, and you get to throw dice. And that is a great combination. Fantastic game, and I keep going on about, but I still love it, and look how much I've played it. One of the things that you might have noticed, if you have a child who's got attention problems who's also quite into gaming, is a kind of paradox. They can be really turned off by strategy and kind of thinking ahead, and yet they're really able to manage a lot of complex information at once in something like a miniatures game or Magic the Gathering or something like that. And it doesn't make sense. They haven't got the patience for actually quite a simple strategic game, but these things really kind of suit them. If that might be the case, then I'm not suggesting that you embark on miniatures games or Magic the Gathering because you probably have finite financial resources. But Pixel Tactics is similar in spirit to these. There's a lot of information to take in, but it's all tactical rather than strategic. And I think it's quite a nice way in for these kids to this kind of game. It's got a video gamey kind of look to it, and we have enjoyed this one. Now, all of these games I've talked about tend to be games for older children. So if you have a younger child with attention problems, what do you do? Well, again, I say this every week, but that's okay. If you can get a young child with attention problems to play anything, be it Snap, be it Connect 4, and again, 2-player is quite good because they haven't got so much waiting, then you're getting there. If you're playing, they're enjoying it, you're doing them good. If you're not playing, if you're not enjoying it, don't play it. Again, say that again, I make no apologies. So good luck. This is a very challenging group to get into tabletop gaming. I find it challenging, and I'm supposed to be both a specialist and a dad, so it is very hard. But worth it. You can really have a lot of fun with these guys. They're enormously entertaining when they can get into the groove. So I'll see you again for the next video when I'll be talking about dexterity, planning, organisation, that sort of thing. But until then, you've been unsurpassed. I've been Max Davey, and I'll see you then.